Yo guys, today we're gonna watch cut content of ReZero season 3 from Aninews finally. Aninews finally did a ReZero cut content. It has been so long. He really focused on solo living for no reason, but not that I hate it, even though I already read the manhwa. I still don't know what the novel actually has in in common or difference in solo leveling. But yeah, let's check the card content. Even though we already see a kidnap, maybe we can get more perspective and information from other content creators as well. So yeah, let's watch it.
ReZero, but I know I'm pretty late to filling you in on ReZero,
Yep.
but I actually think it might have worked out for the best. I'm still incredibly sorry to keep you waiting this long, but with the story now being segmented into each fight against the archbishops, rather than do cut content episode by episode, I can instead split them up by matchup. So, where normally we'd be jumping around from fight to fight, now we can simply focus on one of them. I'll be doing 2 episodes to cover the whole Regulus showdown, then 1 each for all the other archbishops after that. It'll be everything these incredible battles left out from the novel. Now, I'm just gonna take a quick second to promote my new teas inspired by solo leveling, since while it may not be relevant to ReZero, I think these are designs some of you might still be interested in. They're only available for 2 more weeks, so I just wanted to shout them out before they're gone forever. If you're interested, then you can check them out using the link down in the description. It's the best way to support the channel for those looking for other ways to do so. But anyway, this is the first half to Subaru's fight against Regulus. It's all the additional interactions, dialogue, and even fights, up to when he figures out what his powers are. The anime did a fantastic job adapting what they did, but there were several moments left out that added to the overall intensity and Subaru's struggle to survive. So, to start with when he just entered the church, there was a bit more back and forth between him and Regulus. Regulus would call it a shame the wedding was about to become awake, while Subaru would question the confidence from a guy who just got turned down at the altar. What then caused Regulus to start using force wasn't Reinhardt's comment about him not being worthy, but rather Subaru's own comment insulting his persona. You see, for someone who's always calling himself complete and perfect, Subaru found it odd that Regulus was always comparing himself to those he described as defective. It was a flaw in his logic that Regulus didn't like being pointed out. Now, Regulus's threat here wasn't just a bluff that pissed everyone currently present. They were words he truly believed regardless of how nonsensical they were. As insane as it was to think he wouldn't have been responsible for killing them, the way he spoke clearly indicated otherwise. At no point did Regulus think anyone other than Subaru and Reinhardt would be their murderers. It was an absurd notion of justice Regulus found zero lies in. It was when Amelia made the move which put herself into a worse situation that Reinhardt's obedience and Regulus' words respecting it would be some of the most logical things he's said ever. Aside from it being a commendable act of humility, the opportunity for diplomacy was what Regulus believed language had evolved for. To him, too many people tried to resolve things by force without first talking about it. So, for all the crazy things Regulus had said before, it seems there are a couple times when he does make a bit of sense. Although, in this case it was to express a demand most wouldn't consider fair at all. Initially, said demand was to die by his hand, but considering how impolite it would be to ask him that, Regulus instead showed gratitude to Reinhardt and offered what we saw in the anime. Him dying then led to an interesting comment from Regulus, since it's kind of ironic for a guy who's practically
no matter what comes, like we let death comes all too quickly. However great the achievement, however terrible the sin, death comes for all equally. In this world where all suffer equally go unpunished. Damn, this kind of makes sense, bruh. Damn, that's kind of amazing. That's a kind of good quote, but I don't like it that he's the one that's saying it.
Immortal to talk about death being this cruel equalizer. Interestingly enough, though, it seems even Regulus knew death would eventually come for him too. It's for that reason that he described himself as someone satisfied with the smaller things. As a person who proclaims to not need much, knowing the end was imminent was why he lived life continually seeking out joy. It was also that when that time finally came, he could say he was content. It was
Really?
after reviving and attacking with Amelia's sword that the weapon would crumble away from the force of it. The fact it lasted long enough to create the impact it did, though, was an exceptional
Really?
feat that spoke volumes to its creator. Not many
Oh, glaze to Emilia. Whoa.
weapons could withstand the power Reinhardt put into them. Now, for those wondering about Reinhardt's Blessing of the Phoenix, according to him, it allows him to revive from a single death. I'm assuming that means it can only be used once, but that doesn't mean he can't just manifest another blessing that does the exact same thing.
Oh,
I mean-
you're saying that he can use the same, it disappear and get another one of the same blessing? That's stupid. What the hell?
We saw blessings come to him when he needed them, so I imagine Reinhardt can just ask for whatever now.
Damn.
Regulus returning from the rubble included yet another introduction and proclamation of how he was the most complete person, along with remarks regarding their disregard
Yeah, when I think about it, he didn't introduce himself during the fight with Subaru and Reinhardt.
for him as a person. It was when hearing those iconic statements Greed was known for that Amelia would start to remember something. She couldn't help but feel that she'd met him somewhere. So, rather than just keep herself guessing, Amelia decided to ask Regulus straight to his face. It was a question to which he answered no. Regulus had no memory of ever coming across her before. To him, this was just her trying to trick him, and that led to a series of insults regarding her infidelity. As words Subaru couldn't stand to accept, he quickly flung his whip right at Regulus's face. Of course, it did no damage, but it did, however, stop his rant before he could insult Amelia more. It was right as Regulus was about to make Subaru pay for that's when Reinhardt would send him flying, bringing us now to the new battlefield that was the entire city of Pristella. For Subaru and Amelia, who stayed behind to deal with the wives, this was a challenge of its own because Regulus's hold on their heart was unbreakable. An interesting interaction which highlighted exactly that was a certain chuckle Sylphie gave when Subaru suggested Reinhardt could beat Regulus. You see, unlike how Sylphie remained emotionless in the anime, in the novel she instead laughed at Subaru like he was a child spouting a fairy tale.
Oh.
To her and all the other wives next to her, Regulus's power was absolute. There wasn't anything Subaru could say that would change that. Now, with Reinhardt and Regulus essentially being the unstoppable force and the immovable object, you'd think their matchup would be a tie all the way through. This, however, wasn't the case, as there were constant shifts in momentum in which either side looked like they could win.
Oh.
So, first it was very easily Reinhardt, since with Regulus being an amateur who knew very little about the technical aspects of combat, keeping up with him was straight up impossible. There was no way for Regulus to effectively counter at all, so all he could do was toss his hands haphazardly in every direction. For Subaru, who was watching all this happen, Reinhardt's speed made it look like he was in 16 places at once.
Oh, really?
Neither him nor Regulus could keep up with what Reinhardt was doing. Even
Too fast.
Reinhardt was well aware of this skill disparity himself, so when Regulus had asked out of shock what he was, not only did Reinhardt have time to state his position as Velt's knight, he was also able to advertise his hopes of garnering Regulus's support in the election. I'm sure this was just Reinhardt being Reinhardt, but from Regulus's perspective it was pretty BM. I mean, clearly he wasn't being taken seriously.
Lol.
What Reinhardt was able to learn
Imagine Fat has Regulus as her support. Dude, the Fat Cam is just... If that the case, the Fat Cam is just undefeatable at that point. Imagine.
from his various attacks here, though, was that Regulus's invincibility differed from the way his blessings worked. It seemed the rules that applied to both their powers were very much different. So, it was as
What?
Regulus continued to get knocked around that he would heavily criticize the violence Reinhardt seemed to rely on so much. This enabled Regulus to call Reinhardt a villain,
About you may have carried the day countless times before, but this is the limit for those who happily spill atop circles of others. How many people feels have you trampled on, you hideous greedy
and
monsters?
that was an assessment Reinhardt couldn't necessarily disagree with. Perhaps this was Reinhardt just being modest, but for him there was some truth to it. He wasn't gonna shy away from the fact that his methods were essentially victory by overwhelming force. This
Cool.
made talking to Regulus be like looking deep into a mirror at himself, and it was from that he now understood why Subaru advised not to listen to him. Such self-reflection was something Regulus couldn't care less for though, so he quickly started mocking Subaru next. It was an unacceptable act Reinhardt couldn't stand for, leading him to drag Regulus's head across the pavement and plow the streets with it.
Damn.
He would then set him up for this beautifully artistic ice attack, a plan Subaru himself described as a cheese strat. It was after when Subaru thought the fight was over that he would start to feel guilty for teaming up on Regulus. Given how he had a new appreciation for life, Subaru honestly didn't like the idea of killing anymore. He knew all too well that only terrible things came from revenge. So, it was for that reason Subaru did feel remorse right now, but considering how archbishops were an unfathomable evil that couldn't be left alive, this to him was the exception. Now, I'm sure you deduced each of Subaru's plans was part of an overall plan to figure out how Regulus's invulnerability worked, so the fact he came out of this without even being wet, well, that clearly indicated this wasn't some sort of enhanced defense ability. No, if anything, they knew now that this was something fundamentally different. Perhaps a power related to his ability to casually walk on water. It's then that Reinhardt would grab his sword back from Subaru, but despite it still not budging from its sheath, Reinhardt's own opinion was different now. His assessment was that Regulus was dangerous. His only choice then was to swing his sword with the sheath on, highlighting a mindset that only the strong could afford. You see, it was only those who were truly powerful that never saw the need for subtlety or tricks. With overwhelming force always being the most successful, that was the only tool they ever needed to rely on. So, this would lead to an intense clash the anime left out, which is a bit unfortunate since it showed Regulus taking the fight a bit more seriously. Like, where before he was getting tossed around like a ragdoll, now every hit didn't even move him an inch. Despite each blow being strong enough to kill any other person hundreds of times over, there just didn't seem to be any sort of impact anymore. The two had reached yet another even deadlock. This was a tie that didn't last for long though, as during an incredible bout of close quarters combat, Reinhardt would get his leg literally exploded by an attack from Regulus. It wasn't from any of the projectiles Regulus had produced though, but rather his own breath he turned into a weapon. A mere sigh had allowed Regulus to attack from a place Reinhardt least expected.
Using Gojo here, it's kinda what you call, because Gojo's power is kinda similar to Regulus. The difference is Regulus is much way broken because it just affects him conceptually, while Gojo it feels like it doesn't really control his power conceptually because it does need energy, while Regulus doesn't really need energy to activate his authority.
That's what led him to get kicked away, removing him from the battle despite Amelia's best efforts to stop him. Though we didn't see it in the anime, she had actually summoned several walls of ice to slow Reinhardt down, none of which worked as he would instead fly right through, leaving this unnatural human-shaped gap behind him. And that's a point we'll soon find out is very important. Regulus's ensuing argument with Amelia would result in a rant of straight-up misogyny, followed by that crazy scene with the water cube. This led to their retreat down the waterway, which at first was using only their shoes, up until Subaru made the suggestion to create skates. It's not like this was something Amelia had practiced making before, but what she did practice was lots of image training with Subaru. Her ice brand arts was a technique Subaru taught her, and that practiced communication from it is what allowed her to make these skates. Amelia's counterattack while on them was a futile effort Regulus could only describe as
Damn, so Subaru actually give her ideas to for her own combat style. Cool.
pointless resistance. And when pointless resistance was done in the face of someone with overwhelming strength, well, that's what Regulus considered a denial of his right to be himself. To him, fighting back was them showing lack of consideration for their opponent. Regulus's chase would then continue far longer than what we saw in the anime, since even after leveling out on even ground, Regulus would continue his pursuit while Subaru and Amelia would continue to run away. How did Amelia and Subaru maintain their momentum while not sliding downward anymore? Well, that was due to an incredible display of finesse from Subaru's skills with the whip. You see, Amelia would have to create projectiles of ice, which would then serve as self-propelled rockets for Subaru to latch onto. As soon as the icicle they were attached to started to lose velocity, Amelia would make another one, then Subaru would latch on to that. So, altogether it was a pretty difficult game of target switching, since not only did
Damn.
Subaru have to accurately land his whip while they were moving, there was also a very small window in which the switch was possible. Plus, with the added speed making it impossible for the lesser spirits to keep freezing the water, Subaru and Amelia were essentially water skiing now. Any
Water
mistake
skiing.
would send them headfirst into the canal. That being
Damn.
the case, Subaru could only pray to whatever greater power that would listen. He even sent some prayers to his master. It was
Damn.
during this chase that an interesting observation was made, since it was whenever Amelia would try to disrupt Regulus with a massive barricade of ice that he would just glide through it like it wasn't even there. A human-shaped tunnel would form in whatever she dropped on him. This was a peculiar interaction that got Subaru thinking, cause when Reinhardt had gotten hit back here, the gaps that formed in Amelia's ice walls were human-shaped too. They didn't shatter like how they normally would had they been hit with something forceful. They kinda just made space in a way that was
Yeah. It doesn't make sense physically. Like, like if we see in, like, how I wanna say it, it's kind of hard to figure out the Regulus ability just from the starting. Like, you got to need to have more evidence to know what Regulus ability is. But with this does show that Subaru's intellect more.
completely
His
unnatural.
observation of
So,
the
whatever
battlefield.
move Regulus used to send Reinhardt flying here is the same move he used now to make clear whatever was blocking him. It was an essential clue that helped Subaru to figure out Regulus's power later, one we unfortunately didn't get to see in the anime. Now, it was then that Reinhardt would make his return, revealing a healed leg and yet another reason for Regulus to yell at him. Once again, Reinhardt would be villainized for being more blessed than the average person, since clearly healing magic was his forte too. It made Regulus think Reinhardt was the type of person who crushed people's dreams just by existing. Regulus's assumption here was wrong though, since Reinhardt's leg healing was by no effort of his own. It was simply healed by the lesser spirits in the atmosphere that were worried for him. Reinhardt would then proceed with Plan O, combined with attempts at Plan A and S in the process. All
hell
had
is
failed,
that?
but at the very least, Reinhardt was buying some time again. It gave Subaru a chance to consider everything he's seen so far. This led to the connection with the stars, which, just like the Japanese architecture here, all pointed to the existence of someone other than him who was pulled into this world. There was clear influence lingering from Subaru's old world. I won't get into the full train of thoughts Subaru used to unveil Regulus's power, but the nickname for his star in the Leo constellation was clue enough. Amelia's answer to what she felt here also confirmed Subaru's suspicions everything Regulus showed until now wasn't just mere invincibility. This then led to the question, was Regulus's heart beating, which was an answer Reinhardt actually had to sacrifice a lot to learn. Not only was he literally tossed into the moon, but Regulus's attack was so forceful it actually crushed his shoulder blade. It was the
Ooh.
third time Reinhardt had taken damage now. With
Damn.
Reinhardt now gone though, Regulus was confident the fight was over. He was hoping Subaru and Amelia would show some sort of despair, but instead they seemed to be enjoying themselves. It was quite the shock considering the punishment they were about to face. Regulus would call them names trying to pressure them into seeing things his way, but Subaru would just clap back with insults of his own. He would make fun of his gray hair and empty head,
Grey
all in
hair.
an effort to extend their time with him. The reason he believed this was the best course of action was because through all his encounters with Regulus so far, Subaru realized he couldn't win without patronizing and dominating his opponent first. So, for Subaru to stand there and act all confident, well, that made it so Regulus still had a long way to go. Like, the only reason Regulus went along with any of their gambits so far was because that was all part of showing them how futile their efforts were. Until they fully understood that nothing worked, Regulus would continue to let them try until they did. He needed to see them reach the darkest pits of despair. This was a weakness Subaru knew he could exploit for extra time, since Regulus's need to show how complete and perfect he was trumped the need to win as fast as possible. It's the reason we see him get so mad every time they fight back against him. They refused to acknowledge his dominance no matter how many times they failed.
Oh.
Amelia would then launch her attack, buying time for her to leave while Subaru could run away himself. Regulus couldn't help but be annoyed by the fleeing target in front of him, leading to a chase down where Subaru would have to use parkour to avoid getting caught. He would dodge his attacks as masterfully as he could, then climb 3 stories to a rooftop as agile as ever. Regulus may not have
I
been
wish you
able to
can
get him
see
there,
it,
but
man.
what he was able to do was knock that building over like it was nothing. Subaru would just jump to the next, but once again Regulus would follow him and topple that one over too.
Damn.
It was a cycle of destruction that would repeat until Subaru found himself inside a building climbing a stairwell looking for a way out. Things looked relatively bleak, but after remembering the wise words of his parkour master,
This is why there is always way out of any given moment guaranteed. So do not neglect the word needed to fight. The moment you give up is the moment you die. There is fate, okay?
that message of survival reminded him of the attitude he needed to face in every situation. It was a
Damn,
self-taught
his
discipline
message,
that supported his frail heart in the worst of situations.
Damn, I really want
So,
to read
as
the
tired as he was and
original
as bleak as
novel.
things looked, Subaru knew there had to be some way out. That's when the exact words he needed to say dawned on him, leading him to yell them out despite dodging through windows and avoiding rubble. It probably wasn't the safest thing to do, but it was certainly the best bet to make considering the situation he was in. Subaru had analyzed Regulus's personality enough to know that this would be the one thing he'd respond to. Sure enough, Regulus's curiosity to know what it is Subaru knew led him to seize his destruction instantly. Subaru would then get himself to somewhere safe and explain the mentality which allowed him to get to this point. Put simply, Regulus is pretty much like Homelander. He
What?
craves for others' approval and needs to be the center of attention always. He constantly speaks of being free of desire and brags of being perfectly fulfilled, but even with all that, he can't live without other people constantly affirming his worth. It's for that reason he projects his insecurities and values on everyone else. He needs to feel superior to them because he's narrow-minded and petty like that. He doesn't want to boast
Damn, I didn't. I don't really have anything to say.
about winning because he's strong. He wants to force everyone to lose because he's afraid of himself. So the only satisfaction he gets is from that physical and verbal proof
can
he's
say
better than
that-
someone. To not break his opponent's spirit in its entirety,
You can say he has massive anxiety. Like he anxious that no one will see him as amazing. He cannot exist without someone validating his existence, which is kinda pitiful.
well, that just
He
wasn't
doesn't like to be alone. Like, yeah, that's the main stick with Regulus. He doesn't like to be alone, but he don't want to be with people that questions his what you call reasoning or something, or his morals, his ethics, his own self. So the fact that he really didn't like it when all the wives are smiling when he was about to die and say, I cannot die alone like that. It kind of makes sense now.
good enough to affirm his superiority. That's why when Subaru claimed he knew Regulus's powers, Regulus was so interested in hearing about it despite him being able to cut Subaru down right there and then. He had actually closed the gap to be right in front of him. Being at arm's length meant absolutely nothing though, because part of affirming superiority included entertaining Subaru's futile efforts. It meant hearing words that ultimately made no difference to him. That being the case, this then left Subaru with 2 options only. He could keep BSing and stall for time, or he could answer in increments, gauge Regulus's reaction, and go from there. The latter is what we saw in the anime, but the reason he didn't go with the former is because in the off chance he did say something completely wrong, Regulus would likely deem that an absolute victory and kill him because of it. So, it's then that Subaru would reveal the whole Lion's Heart thing, and that's a comprehensive topic we'll talk about in the next ReZero video.
Oh man.
For now, I hope you enjoyed this one, along with all the details leading up to the climax of the fight. I'll try to get the rest of the fight done next week, but in the meantime, feel free to check out the solo leveling videos, or the new merch if you want some
It's good that Aninews finally came back for ReZero, but a lot. I guess the difference, because a lot of the what you call Reinhardt getting hit or of anything we already know from Echidna's video, but I guess what's different from Echidna with Aninews is that we get to see a bit of what you call Regulus inner thought, his mentality, and his kind of his own views and why he does it. So I guess it's you can say it's a comprehensive cut content about Regulus what you call chain of thought and how it does how amazing Subaru is in this battle. Like not only that he has amazing parkour skills, like he was a really good support. Like bro. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you for watching. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe, and please check out any news for and support his content, and also check out the playlist to see more of my content too. So yeah, and yeah, that's all from me. Peace out.